Welcome to the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast, where wealth meets legacy. Join your host, Tim Fergestad, as we explore the journeys of Phoenix's finest to success and beyond.
All right. Hello, this is Tim Fergestad. Thank you for joining us. Joining me today is Dr. Eugene Livar. Livar.
Livar, you had it right.
Arizona's first statewide chief heat officer, working through the Arizona Department of Health Services. Dr. Livar. Am I saying it right? I'm messing it up again.
Livar.
Livar. Like lover. Livar.
There you go.
All right. Livar.
Although I respond to, you can call me whatever you like, I'll respond to it.
You're responsible for implementing the state's extreme heat preparedness plan and aligning public, private, and community partners to reduce heat-related risk across Arizona, the whole state. Welcome to the show, Eugene.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So, Dr. Livar, is this your second year?
We are actually starting my third year within this position.
Third year. Okay.
Yeah, started in March of 2024 is when I first started in the position. Okay,
and you're breaking a lot of new ground, setting up all sorts of, I'm sure, SOPs and standards for Arizona. Has that first year or two been the hard part, and now are you settling in, or is it just some new stuff all the time?
I think it's new things all the time as we're moving forward here in Arizona. We're learning about different needs, different communities, doing outreach, trying to be transparent along the way and incorporating new partners as we take next steps. When we really started in 2024, there was a big approach on preparedness, awareness, and setting standards. And so that was really where we focused in on. And then last year's heat season, we really looked at expanding community connections, incorporating partners, and getting feedback to see where some gaps may be so that we could attend to those while making sure that we were making progress on the governor's extreme heat preparedness plan and taking those next steps. And now in 2026, we're just getting ready for the next adventure to see how we can move forward with heat efforts within the state, working with partners that are doing amazing work that are down on the ground with our county, our city, our towns, our CBOs and faith-based organizations, and really looking at what we can do to improve as we start going and getting ready for 2026.
Okay. Is it safe to assume that Arizona is the only state with the chief heat officer?
That's an interesting question. I think with a state level individual identified as a chief heat officer, I would say yes. But there's often a varying flavor depending on what our state or community needs. You may have chief resiliency officers that may be within a state. You may have programs that deal with resilience or deal with extreme weather and other items that are kind of responsible for heat within states. But then you also have identified chief heat leads that may be on smaller jurisdictional levels, such as counties or cities. I think we see this with City of Phoenix and Dave Hondula leading the heat efforts for the City of Phoenix. And so there's some different variances out there. I think we are seeing some positive movement. A lot of states have reached out and are interested in identifying chief heat officers and what does that mean to them? And what are they trying to get out of that role is a really important question for them to ask and identify those objectives as they take some next steps.
Sure. Well, what are the benefits? Why did Arizona decide to make that position?
I think really looking at it, it came and the position was identified within the governor's plan that was really brought forward by her executive order that happened in 2023.
This is the extreme heat preparedness plan?
Yes, an extreme heat preparedness plan. Prior to that plan came out of an executive order that was issued in the summer of 2023, which had several different items in it, including the development of that plan through the Governor's Office of Resiliency and partnering state agencies. And the main idea around that particular position was looking at what we can do to coordinate efforts statewide, help break down silos, and also, be able to bridge between the federal, state, and local levels to make sure that we're able to bring information down and send needs up in a coordinated fashion while making sure that the plan was going and meeting its short and long-term recommendations. And then doing and what we can to listen to our community partners, and be able to take that feedback and see what we can do to implement that and take next steps for needs that are identified within our state.
Okay. Okay. Before we get into some more of the details of that and what, I mean, heat-related risks are and the different programs you're running and how you're trying to find partners to execute on some of these things. Let's step back a little bit and talk. So, are you're trained as an epidemiologist? Is that right?
I'm clinically trained as a physician, and
Hmm.
I've been working within public health for over a decade now. Boy,
Okay.
that's kind of crazy to think about. I think it's been about 12 or 13 years that I've been with Arizona Department of Health Services in various roles.
Okay.
Started off as an epidemiologist, and then have worked up
Okay.
through the ranks to assistant director, and then. I think a lot of people who work either within public health or within government rarely only have one job or one hat. And so I'm the assistant director over resiliency, environment, and policy. I also fill the role of the chief heat officer for the state of Arizona. And then I'm also the public health federal liaison for ADHS too.
Okay. So you seem to enjoy wearing these hats.
I definitely enjoy it. It's definitely entertaining for the brain, to have varying roles and engagements, within state government. I really do enjoy that, and having those varying flavor of problems that arise and problem solving and doing coordination also and working with different partners. That's something I do really enjoy. And look, I've been lucky enough to have opportunities to have different experiences, roles, and responsibilities throughout my time with ADHS.
Okay. Was this something you envisioned when you were training as a doctor?
That's a funny question. I think when I was training, to be a doctor, it was real funny because the course that I had in epidemiology had a book that was probably about this thick, and I think it was
Hmm.
about 60 pages that we did within our coursework and medical training on my side. And so I did have an opportunity to work as a contractor with CDC before working with state government,
Hmm.
which was a really great experience where we had a bilingual healthcare provider helpline where we would filled in calls and questions and help CDC and CDC programs give responses out to those questions to healthcare providers and help find information and resources. I got a really good basis there before I started working at ADHS and doing the epidemiology work there. And been able to have some really great mentors when it comes to epidemiology. What does that mean? And what does it mean to work within public health? And my
Right.
time at ADHS. And so I'm very fortunate for that. And it really did grow that small little flame of epi that I had within me to be where I am today. And so I'm very thankful for that and those opportunities that I've had in Arizona.
Okay. So that wasn't on your radar when you were going to medical school or applying.
Not at all. I was actually, I was a nurse before I went to medical school. So,
Oh, really?
and that's where I met my wife, and we both live here in Arizona and been here for over a decade. And then I decided to go on and go to medical school. And she has been one of my biggest cheerleaders over the years as I've done different work.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. That's great. So I guess just a quick challenge question. I mean, what was the biggest challenge going into a government positions from maybe what you were used to being more clinical, maybe in the as a nurse?
No, it is interesting. And I think that the challenge was kind of looking at, I think a lot of times when you're working within healthcare, you're very patient centric, right? You're looking at the individual and helping that individual with any issues that they're having, helping them find resources, and making sure that you're doing patient education to make sure that they understand what you're relaying to them. And I think going from that seat over to public health and working within government, you got to step back and you got to look at the community. And in the case of where I work at state agencies, the state, and how can you move forward for all of those communities and all of those individuals within those communities, and be able to take next steps and be able to guide efforts, and be able to make an impact in the work that you're doing. And so
Sure.
that did take a little while to kind of change that perspective and the way that you view things and that you work on things. But it has been really helpful. I'm glad I did have that patient-centric experience on my end because I was able to take certain aspects of what I did and the way that I operated with whether it be with customer service or whether it be with patient education and bring some of that to my thought process to
Right.
see how we could like use that with the bigger communities. And I think, and hopefully others think too, it has been impactful and helpful in the work that I've done over the years.
Sure. And I think it gives you some deeper insight into how some of these programs may or may not work when you try to roll them out at different levels.
I think so. I think so. It does, and it's just a different viewpoint and perspective in the room. And I'll be honest, I've never been traditional in myself or my education or the things that I do. I started going to school. I've been everything in the healthcare field, from an MA to working within
Oh, really?
healthcare, to being a nurse,
Okay.
to being a physician, and then being roles up to assistant director within a state agency. So I've always had varying experience and a little different
Yeah.
path than a lot of folks did, but I think that's been helpful
You have a
because
huge, bigger toolkit to
it
bring to
does.
things.
It does.
Yeah.
And I always talk about your tool belt and adding tools to that tool belt and to your toolbox. And I
Yeah.
think it just gives you more to draw on, more life experience that you've
Mhm.
had as you've, gone through life and experienced
Yeah, for
things,
sure.
and able to view things from different viewpoints too. So I think that's been a positive thing that I've brought to the table when it comes to working within
Okay.
ADHS, public health, and state agencies in Arizona.
Okay. All right, now let's back up again and go back to the heat preparedness plan for Arizona and why then? Why did they decide? I mean, it's been hot here for a long time,
It
right?
has. It
Why
has.
why did they decide to grow that initiative and create the chief heat officer?
Sure. I think when we were seeing and experiencing those temperatures in 2023, and the governor was hearing from different voices and entities across the state about the concerns that they were having around heat, I think we need to understand that within the state, there's been work going on around heat at a grassroots level for decades here within
Hmm.
Arizona.
For sure.
There's been some great work happening within our urban areas and centers such as Maricopa, Phoenix, Pima County, and Tucson that have really been leaders. But there's also areas that maybe haven't had as many resources and an ability to really think about heat within our state, that we needed to make sure that there was an equal playing field and awareness for heat and what you can do, education, resources, and also an ability to provide feedback on their needs and voices of what they were experiencing. And so I think it did come to a little bit of a head during that outreach. And then that executive order that I mentioned was given by the governor to kind of step back and look, what do we need to move forward to make sure that we have a coordinated response when it comes to extreme heat, and to really look at a really simple goal. What do we need to move Arizona from a state that just survives the summer to one that thrives through it by building heat ready culture and protects every Arizona, no matter what your zip code is? And I think
Right.
that was a driving, simple goal that was kind of embedded within that executive order. And so that triggered really state agencies working together, coming up with a plan of action, taking community input from different entities and agencies and individuals on what did we need to do as a state to make sure that we were having that
Right.
coordinated response and achieving that goal. And we were seeing, heat-related deaths. We were seeing emergency room visits that were increasing, and it just kind of came to a head at that point in time.
Okay.
And so that's where there was a decision made. Okay, let's look at this a little bit differently than what we've been doing normally, and
Okay.
how can we help those efforts that are already going on within our state to help take that next step. Nobody wanted to reinvent the wheel or take anything away that was already happening within communities, but they wanted to help connect those dots and those
Right.
individuals that were doing great work with others that wanted to do similar things. And that's really how we're looking at this and taking some of those
Okay.
next steps.
Yeah. Coordinating all those efforts more effectively.
Definitely.
Okay. Excellent. So is you mentioned some numbers. I mean, is what's the data really for there's more people here all the time, right?
Yes.
So more people will be in need of help in hot times. Is it really getting hotter? I know urban areas get hotter and hotter as we make more concrete and lay down more asphalt and the densities of buildings and stuff. So things don't can't cool off as well during the night, so they get even hotter. What's the data suggest for Phoenix in general for an escalating problem?
I think we are seeing, and the data is supporting as we work with partners such as NOAA and the National Weather Service, looking at temperature and weather trends that we're seeing within our state. They have been showing us over the last couple of years that those years have really been ranking as some of the hottest years that we've seen within our state. I think we've also seen an increase globally for those temperatures as reported by NASA. And so I think we are seeing those temperatures rise across the globe and here locally, such as within Phoenix. And that's being tracked, and you can see that within the data. So it has been something that has maybe been a little more slow moving than other disasters, right? We're seeing these incremental increases, but we're really starting to notice things. Some of the things for me and my family is we really noticed a lot of times heat season and those high temperatures were ending by the end of September, if not mid-September, a lot of times. And if you've noticed here recently, we've been seeing elevated and even triple digits go until middle or third week of October. And really those warmer temperatures, even they may not be triple digits, extending past that point, like we saw last year. And we've been seeing.
And as a resident, that's always a kick in the butt when when you're in October and you're over 100 degrees.
No, and you're really looking around. Like I'm originally from Texas, and I remember
Okay.
feeling those cold fronts come in when football season would start,
Mm,
being in high school and such. And that's not the case. And my family's feeling the impacts. My son plays sports, and he plays football, and they're out there practicing during the summer months and dealing with those heat advisories, through
right.
October, having to make adjustments and playing. And those are real life scenarios, and a group of students that are really that we need to pay attention to, with these elevated temperatures. And then we also saw in 2025, I'm not sure if you remember, we saw, 90-degree temperatures in February, and we saw our first triple digit
Hmm.
day in April. And so these things are happening earlier or continuing later than we used to experience. And it seems to be
Right.
happening year after year. So I think if you take all of that and just what's being felt by the community, you can really feel how heat is starting to impact health and communities overall. And then you have other things like you mentioned to really take into consideration, such as our urban areas, those concrete jungles storing and radiating that heat out. And we've been really paying attention to the evenings and how we're seeing increased days that aren't, going below 90 degrees and really put
Right.
people at risk to be able to take a break, cool down, and get ready for the next day. And they're not really able to do that if they don't have appropriate heat mitigation items available to them. And then it's just kind of, accumulating day after day or year after year of what they're experiencing.
Do you work with anybody regarding the security of the grid or the energy for running HVACs and stuff during the summer when we do get heat waves? Because I've heard some cities, I mean, that can be lethal, right? For particularly susceptible populations.
It can, and it can not only be lethal during, during heat season, but I think we've also see it during cold season in certain states. Like if you remember some of the
Mhm.
grid issues that were happening in Texas
Sure.
during certain winters and snowstorms
Yeah.
that would happen, and that's something that we're very wary of when it comes to heat season here in our state of Arizona. I'm very lucky, and I'm in an interesting position where my position is held within ADHS and under public
Mhm.
health, but I have a dotted line and work really closely with the governor's office of resiliency and
Okay.
Director Mahoney, who leads that particular government office underneath the governor. And they are really focused in on grid resilience along with energy efficiency, and do a lot of great work along with our partners over at DEMA, who deal with emergency management and other pieces to make sure that we're ready and building and really thinking about grid resilience as we're in and out of heat season, because it's also a concern during other seasons and during wildfires and other things that can happen, such as floods
Sure.
within our state and impact that. And so there is a lot of work, and there is a grid resiliency items identified within the governor's plan that we pay
Mhm.
attention to and keep track of on those long-term recommendations.
I could not imagine rolling blackouts in Phoenix. That would in the summer. That would be
No,
crazy.
no, and it's even just like planning for those operational brownouts that may happen in community areas, all of the communication that needs to happen, even if it's planned, the communities that you need to think about are disability community, elderly populations, those who may not be living with others that can assist them, and really making sure that communication happens. It really gives you an ability to think and learn about if this was to happen in an emerging situation, what do we need to do, who do we need to contact, and how do we need to perform these activities if we were to get into that state.
Right, right. And you mentioned weather changes earlier. Um, depending upon the area, it's some of them are not showing average warming significantly, but what is called global weirding, where you get higher extremes, right? Not global warming, global weirding in some markets, right? In the globe is a funny thing, and um, yeah, El Nino is something that I remember having a factor here in Phoenix some summers and so forth. I mean, are there trends like that that are the more significant factors, or what are they tracking in terms of weather that the people should be aware of?
No, definitely. And I think that's something our National Weather Service partners really help us out with within the state of Arizona to keep track of some of those impacts. And I love the term weather weirding. I might have to take that as I
Instead of
talk to
global warming, global weirding.
yeah,
Yeah,
as I talk to National Weather Service and some of the great individuals that work there. And they keep track of those things like El Nino and the impacts of some of what we're seeing, those global systems that are coming in and impacting you know the U.S. and also Arizona specifically, and using some of those predictive models that come in because it does come in and you have to look at not only the heat but also the expected rainfall, monsoons, wildfire risk, and other things that come into play. And all of those variables work together and can either make things more severe or less severe as you're looking at heat season.
right,
And they can also change in the middle of heat season, and your predictive models may not come out exactly as you thought they would. And so it's something that's monitored on a continual, if not daily or multiple times during the day, um, looked at by those particular
right.
agencies as we take some next steps.
So
But it's huge. It's huge to keep track of that, and I'm so glad that we have some really smart individuals that help us with that and the interpretation of that data when it comes to weather, so that we can use that as part of what we assess as we look at what we're going to be doing within the state.
that's another hat that you get to wear, and you're an honorary meteorologist now.
I've learned so much about what the National Weather Service does, and it's really interesting. We have four National Weather Service offices that service the state of Arizona,
Okay,
and have jurisdiction over certain areas of the state, and they coordinate with their messaging and the way that they work with those particular jurisdictions. And they have been really great and at the table. During 2024, when we first started implementing the plan, and before that. But they have been such a great partner as we look at working together and helping inform us and our community members of what to expect, and really look at where do we go from that point forward once those forecasts come up or those heat warnings come up to be able to take some next steps to keep communities safe.
okay, right. So. I don't know if this is in your wheelhouse, but since you mentioned like we're talking about weirding weather and 90s in February and stuff, is it true in general that if it's a warm winter, it's going to be a terrible summer, or vice versa? What's the trend, and what are we looking like for the summer?
I think, I'm not sure if it's necessarily predictive, right? I often ask Tom, who is a counterpart over the National Weather Service, can you look in his crystal ball and tell me if these
Right.
warm months that we've had in December and January are going to lead us to a dire summer? And then he says, well, we have to look at the models, and there's a whole bunch of data that you look at. But I think one of the things it does, it really keeps heat in our minds as we move
Mhm.
forward. And it also lets you know that there has been changes from what we've experienced a decade or two ago. And the way that we have experienced or expect weather to operate during the year isn't necessarily going to continue from this point forward. And those are little reminders. And I don't know if you can necessarily predict off of it, but I think it really keeps us in the mindset, okay, we really need to continue planning and make sure that we're prepared and getting messaging out in time so that people can be able to make, informed decisions as they need to as this
Right.
warm weather starts to increase and worsen.
Okay. On that note, what are some of the initiatives you have going and maybe for 2026?
Sure. I think some of the things that we really are looking at, and some of the things that have been really helpful for us have been our centralized website, which is heat.az.gov. I think with looking at that, there was a problem identified in the past. If you needed help on a utility bill or finding a cooling center map
Right.
or getting safety tips, you had to go through a lot of different websites to be able to find that information in an emergency or in a time of need. And so we built this centralized hub of heat.az.gov, and it consolidated resources from everything from the National Weather Service alerts to community resources into a mobile friendly hub that people can access and get a lot of information in one spot and be able to navigate what those resources are to help meet their needs. And I think it's also become a blueprint that it's no longer just a website. It's a tool that empowers every Arizonan to be informed for their family and community. I think some of the other pieces that we've done that have been really successful is also our Check on Your Neighbor campaign.
Yes.
This is something that we utilized, started in 2024. I think, coming out of the pandemic and the work that we did within public health, I'm sure, you noticed and listeners noticed there was a lot of siloing. Everybody was kind of living in their own little bubble to have
But
the,
that was coming from the Midwest. That was something that struck me right away coming here to begin with, right? Is people who may not listening may not be aware. In the Midwest, our yards are all open.
yeah.
Whereas here, there's walls around all the perimeter, which started for irrigation back in the day, right? Is my
Yes.
understanding.
I
But
believe so. I believe that's where it started, And, I think we saw, statistics that, heat deaths were occurring among people who not only were homeless or unhoused, but who were also living alone, who may be making hard decisions about their AC, if it was broken or not functioning properly, or even to, run their AC due to concerns about utility bills and other things that can really impact,
right.
their daily living.
And
And so we
in an environment where people don't hang out in the driveways and talk to each other all the time, and in their yards, the car comes in, the door goes down. You don't know how they're doing.
You don't know. And so we really launched this campaign, and we were asking Arizonans to just spend a minute to 3 minutes checking on your neighbors. They may be elderly, they could be isolated, getting to know your neighbors and just kind of your social net that's happening in your immediate area to know who's there, who may be in need. And I think we're really starting to see a shift in culture where people are realizing that heat safety isn't just a government job, it's a neighborly one. And you can knock on a door and realize the neighbor's house is maybe 95 degrees inside. And you're not just being friendly, you might be performing a life-saving intervention by checking on them and then being aware of resources like heat.az.gov to help connect them to entities and agencies that may be able to assist them if they're having
Right.
difficulties during these hot temperatures.
Right. What was the Check on Your Neighbor campaign? Did you say that was started during COVID?
It was something that states have been utilizing a little bit off and on, and we utilized a little bit during the pandemic. But we were really thinking, and we were working with partners such as the American Red Cross that do really big canvassing efforts, and also work in neighborhoods just in general, from everything from smoke detector efforts to just doing wellness checks and letting people know about resources during a disaster. And it was just something that we were like, this is something we could lean on and really just make kind of a standard in messaging kind of going forward and maybe break down those social silos a little bit and just get communities connecting a little bit more. And it's been really great. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback. We're starting to see it pop up a little bit more. And just my public health hat and some of my previous experiences, it doesn't have to just be from heat season. I mean, this can be something that can be utilized during respiratory season, in other natural disasters, or environmental
Yeah.
events, to just be able to check on each other and know who's there and make sure everybody's doing okay in your immediate circle.
Okay. Yeah, sure, sure. Um, okay, as we start wrapping up the interview, are there any, yeah, I'm sure you have a bunch of different initiatives going on, but is there any particular one you want to highlight for 2026 that you're
Yeah,
launching?
sure. I think for 2026, we're really excited. We're working within the governor's extreme heat preparedness plan, but we're also coming out with 2026 heat report from a public health perspective. We've been doing a three-phased approach, the way that we work with heat season. We do prior to heat season, we really look at educating awareness and getting resources ready and out the door. We to have a second phase where we really look at heat season, work through heat season, and monitor needs and have a listening ear to communities with what may be going on during heat season. And then we have a phase three now after the middle of October or so, where we step back and we evaluate our efforts and look at what maybe do we need to modify, what worked, what didn't work, what could be some new approaches that we could have for the next heat season. And so some of those will be rolled out with the 2026 heat report that we'll be pushing out from ADHS. So that's really exciting, and that will kind of be a guiding light on some of the efforts that we'll be doing, while still making sure those short and long-term recommendations are moving forward from the governor's priorities that she identified.
All right. Excellent. Well, Dr. Livar, if people would like to connect with you or your office or learn more about the Arizona heat resources and so forth, where can they go? What should they do?
I would definitely recommend going to heat.az.gov. That is a great website to go to. It also links to our ADHS webpage. And if anybody ever has any questions, needs, or wants to reach out to our program, they can reach out to azheat@azdhs.gov. And that's a monitored inbox that we all look at and see what emails are coming in. And we may not know all the answers, but we will look into it for you or connect you with somebody who may be able to assist you with your question.
All right. Great stuff. Thank you, everyone, very much for watching and listening. Thank you very much, Dr. Eugene Livar, for joining me today. Very much appreciate you sharing your insights into Arizona health and weather.
And thank you so much for having me. Hopefully this is a little bit helpful, and it was a great experience. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Inspired by our guests? Visit phoenixprosperitypodcast.com/guest and join us on the show and share your success story with Tim. The spotlight awaits.